Recent reports indicate that Juraj Slafkovsky was this close to being sent to the AHL last year, but since then, and because of Coach Marty's faith, Slafkovsky has taken leaps and bounds with recent player cards showing he is by far the best player in his class, blowing classmate Logan Cooley out of the water. We're here to talk about all that, plus some Kent Hughes quotes on Slafkovsky's development, all on this episode of Habs Digest. So you're going to want to stick around, and if you are going to stick around, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because that's 58% of you guys watching all of these videos still. That number's not going down, so some of you are not hitting subscribe, and if you like the daily Habs content here, hit it. You won't regret it. Jesse, we got to talk a bit about Juraj Slafkovsky, and it just feels like things are getting better and better every single day, with a recent report from Alexandre Gascon saying the Habs management were ready to send Slafkovsky down to the AHL, but Marty insisted he stay to be coached further. When everything seemed to be going against Slaf, when even the other coaches allowed themselves thinly veiled criticism, Marty insisted the young man was on the verge of coming out of his shell, and he asked the org to continue the development of the Slovak in the NHL. And we had some interesting quotes from Kent Hughes on this very recently. He basically said from the start of the year, we've seen improvements. They've seen him constantly. He did say, to be fair, he was in Jeff Molson's office, said, I really like where his game's going. Slaf then had a dud the next game, but he said there's no question the coaching staff are seeing the progression, his strength along the walls, his ability to protect pucks. Last year he'd get bumped and get knocked off balance. He'd lose it, but he's now learning to take his stick off the puck as he absorbs physical contact, repossess it afterwards. Some tricks of the trade in North America. There's more to come, and he follows that up by saying, quote, I still think it's going to be another 3 or 4 years before we can see what Slaf can be. Jesse, his progression has been phenomenal. Kent Hughes hit the nail on the head, and it's been really crazy to see, not only from our perspective, but from the management, the coaching perspective, how everyone has come together around Slaf to see this guy is special.
And Marty was right again, Coach Marty, so it's just giving us these reasons of why we should trust him. We see how Slaf was able to really kind of turn around his game as a result and get rewarded, get on that first line, get on that first power play. So it's so interesting to kind of see like the relationship that Coach Marty and Juraj Slafkovsky have together, where it's really like this very personal sort of relationship. Like, it's almost kind of like Coach Marty's kind of like a Jedi hockey master, and like Juraj's like his apprentice, just taking him under his wing and just kind of teaching him and kind of soaking in all the game for him. But I really like what Kent Hughes said. Like, it's gonna be like in 3 to 4 years before like what we see really what we have in Juraj Slafkovsky. But isn't it so nice to seeing like the whole development? Because like right now where he's at, he's developed now to a place where no, he's not a point per game guy, but he's an impact player. Mm-hmm. See, but in the future, we all ask like, okay, what is Juraj Slafkovsky going to be in the future? In the future, he's going to be an impact player, but that gets points. A guy who's every time where he's on the ice, you can just tell him, he's noticeable on both sides of the ice. And we're already seeing that, right? Even though the points aren't there, he's noticeable, and for sure he has little ups and downs, in terms of the game. But as a whole of late, he is just very, very much prominent. When he is on the ice, he's affecting things in so many different ways. So I think Kent is totally right. Like, it's not totally linear at all. But us as Habs fans, we're happy because we are seeing the progression 110%.
Yeah, it's wild, and I think you're bang on the money when you're talking about an impact player, and that's exactly what he's been. And I got some player cards to show it, as a lot of you guys are familiar with JFresh. We talk about JFresh all the time. You probably follow him on Twitter. All these crazy stat cards, advanced stats showing the impact relative to the league of a lot of players. And he said recently, he's like, hey, a lot of people have been talking about Juraj Slafkovsky. Let's take a look at the stats. And he says, not that bad, to be honest. And this is a guy who's had player cards showing Slaf as one of the worst players in the league last year and even early this year. Now, this is a 10 games played track, so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of a running tally over the last 10 games. And even in those last 10, Slaf's only been on the first line for a handful of them. But you can see in most of these categories, 50th percentile is league average, basically. He's well above league average in most of these categories. Notably, the slot passing, no surprise if you've been watching him play. That has been one of his surprisingly best skills this year. 98th percentile in size, can't teach that. 82nd in hits, 61st in speed at that size. The only things he struggles with, finishing touch right now, which is going to come in the future, and that's something they've worked on a lot recently. Defense play driving, again, maybe a weakness for now, but then his rush offense, which, to be fair, has been higher with Suzuki and Caufield. It's only, I think it's just a bit lower because in this sample size, you have some games where he wasn't with them as well, and he's looked a lot better on the rush in the last 5 games. So you take a look, there's a lot of blue there, there's a lot of around average, and there's only a couple reds. But Jesse, it's not just that. After that, someone on the Habs subreddit, I forget who it was, they were like, hey, well, what about Logan Cooley? So we went and looked. Here's Logan Cooley. Do you notice anything? Well, what I notice is the only things he's better than Slaf at, finishing touch, and it's not by much, 4th to 15th percentile, rush offense from 44th to 61st for Logan Cooley, and of course, skating speed. Everything else, as I flash back and forth, feel free to pause here, take count of the numbers, and then come back to Logan Cooley. And this is, again, just a 10-game kind of thing, but at the same time, Jesse, you're very right in that Slaf is impacting the game in so many other ways. Look, being in the NHL at 19 is almost impossible. It's so difficult. There's a reason, like, these two guys are basically the only two guys who have had extended time in the NHL. And this is not to crap on Logan Cooley, because he is a phenomenal player and a phenomenal prospect, but again, I think people are almost underselling the amount of crazy stuff Slaf has done, the amount of impact he has had recently, especially in so few total NHL games played.
Right, because it's been so few, and that's why the question can still be fairly asked by cynics, by critics. Did we pick the right guy? You know, and when we're looking at these underlying numbers, we're seeing that, you know, in a lot of ways at this juncture in time that we have, because it's not just on the offensive side where Slaf is putting up better numbers, but also on the defensive part. And that's the thing that I find really interesting about Juraj Slafkovsky is, again, to the point is that I see him being a player that can really rack up goals and assists in the NHL, while at the same time playing on that first line where he's having such an effect on the game defensively by just being such a big guy, going against the toughest matchups of the other team where he's putting up points, and then being very hard to play against, winning a lot of puck battles against the boards, being very physical, getting guys to sit down on the ice. You know, so that combination of being very offensive and then good defensively, surprisingly good defensively, I think we'll see as his career moves forward. I see that as being a huge net positive for the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh yeah, really, really it is. And again, like, there's a reason Slaf's been getting on the first line, and it's not because he's going to go out there and score a point every night. However, like you said, I do think that's going to come. It's just every little thing he does, and while his defense definitely isn't there yet, you can see all the tools for it. The fact that he has not even played 82 games yet, he's still not even at 70 games, I don't think. And he's 19 years old. Like, we talk about this, right? So Kent Hughes is like 3 to 4 years. That's when we know what Slaf will be. Well, guys, in 3 to 4 years, he's going to be about the age Cole Caufield is now. He's going to be younger than what Nick Suzuki is right now. In 3 to 4 years, Slaf is going to be younger than what Suzuki is right now. Like, that's what I think gets lost on some people. Like, the jump he has made in the tiny sample size is really, really phenomenal. And yeah, I mean, we hope it continues. And I know it's going to continue. It's just been such an amazing stretch of games for Uri. But we're going to move on a bit from Uri just for the final segment of the video, Jesse. We gotta talk about some Habs prospects that are getting some recognition as well. And TSN, Craig Button, and the like. They did the Core 4 under 24, and they ranked a lot of players by how good they are at certain statistics. And there were some things like puck handling, some things like shooting, and some Habs prospects. Well, at least 3. There might have been more that I missed, but there's at least 3 in some significant categories that were all ranked as 5-star guys and within the top 5 for all prospects under 24. Take a look at this. For skating, all players under 24, Cayden Guhle comes in at 5th as a 5-star skater. You got shooting, Caufield comes in at 2nd. And for stick handling, you have Lane Hutson under only Zegras, Jack Hughes, Logan Cooley, and Tim Stützle. This was just like, I know, unless we read it wrong, I don't think we both read it wrong. We had to do a double take and say, wow, like, these guys are really high on these Habs players. And you know, in any list Craig Button's doing, you're going to see Lane Hutson probably somewhere. I mean, Button has been famously praising Hutson quite a lot. So, I mean, just amazing, and almost some underrated talent from the likes of Guhle and Hutson especially. Just so cool to see.
And amazing to see Lane Hutson, like, right up there with the big dogs already, not even in the NHL, already considered in the top 5 for stick handling. I mean, this guy's got silky smooth mitts, you know, but again, you know, talking about, you know, projectability, right? Just having those superstar type of skills, right? Sometimes just being able to do one thing really good in the game, but it seems like Lane Hutson's got multiple skills there. But yeah, I mean, you know, Cayden Guhle, number 5 for under 24 skaters in the NHL, like, that's going to be a skill that serves us very well in today's NHL for sure. And Cole Caufield, only behind Connor Bedard, number 2 for best shot for under 24 years old. Like, that's pretty amazing. And you got to feel like it's going to pick up. I feel like Cole Caufield's going to start looking for one-timers a lot more. That's kind of the key to his game. It's a quick release, getting it off quick. I think we're going to see the one-timer kind of released, for the rest of this year, pardon the pun. So I really can't wait to see that. But again, just having so many of these young guys, right? It all speaks about that young core that we're really trying to develop. And, it looks like we really got some keepers, as we might have suspected.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really crazy. Like, I know we don't like to get too hyped out of about our own prospects. I know Cayden Goulet's been in a bit of a slump recently, but when you look at stuff like this, it reminds you that Guhle had one of the highest top speeds of any player in the NHL last year. Cole Caufield, we know what he can do with his shot. He's still, I'm sure, healing a little bit from that shoulder injury. He was talking to Marty before practice today. I'm sure they're talking about it a lot. There was a stat talking about his one-timer, Jesse. I think it was LDS that showed it. It was last year he was something like 12 goals on 27 one-timers. This year, 0 goals on 12 one-timers. So maybe something that we need to look for, because in the past it's been his bread and butter. And like you said, Hutson up with the big dogs already. It's really amazing. But yeah, Habs are just... like, a lot of these guys are so good, and there's so many other depth guys that we don't even get a chance to mention. Someone like a Joshua Waugh, who could very well come up some point soon. We have Emil Heineman, who got called up, we'll probably see. We have so many more young guys, Filip Machar, Owen Beck, who could very well captain Team Canada at the World Juniors. We're going to have to wait and see. He made the team, but we'll just have to wait and see if he gets the C, as he's the only returning player. Lots of positive stuff in Habs land, but we'll be here to cover it all. For now, though, that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, guys. We're getting closer and closer to 10K every single day. I know a lot of you are still watching at this point in the video, because every time I mention it, you guys will comment, you guys will say you're still here at the end, and it's really heartwarming to us to know that you stick around right to the end every single time. We really appreciate you. You know who you are. I'm Josh Goss, for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.